All right, now we're going to build some rims. Now these aren't super complicated rims, so they're not going to be that hard to do, but I do, again, want to use this opportunity as a chance to kind of show you some new techniques and things. So we're going to try to do, we're to create these in a very unique way, or what I would consider to be a unique way. So I'm going to start just by hiding pretty much everything in my scene, just so we're back to like our base grid. And we're just going to start by working off of the grid here. So the idea, if we're going to dissect our reference, and let's kind of study our reference a little bit first. I have a few different rims here. Let's look at this one because these are a little bit different. I think I'm going to go with this one because it's just a little bit more interesting. But these are different, even though they have kind of the same internal design. So basically the idea here is that we have like this cylindrical object, right? And it's got what's called radial symmetry, right? So it's not just symmetry in terms of one side is identical, it's radial symmetry, meaning that there's sort of like the same pattern being repeated around in a radius, right? So we can essentially kind of look at this as a sort of slice, right? So we can essentially just do like one little slice of this and then duplicate it around and have our whole rim. So we don't have to model in every single one of these little holes and all of these little details. We can just sort of model in like a slice of it. And then we can get, and then we'll get like other details and things like that. So what we're going to start with is just a cylinder. So let me minimize this, and I'm going to bring this one back up a little bit. And we're just going to start with a cylinder. So I'm going to go to polygon modeling and create a cylinder. And now we can tell by looking at the size here that these are actually 14-inch rims. This is a small car. They have very small rims. And then back in the 70s and 80s, rims were a lot smaller than they are now. Here it's, almost all cars have like 18 and 20-inch rims. But this is a very small car, and the rims back then were very small. So we have some 14-inch rims. So, and that's 14-inch diameter. So that's about here to here. So about where the tire actually makes contact with the rim. So this is like the lip of the rim here. So the tire actually comes in a little bit. So the rim itself is probably about 15 inches wide. So that would be 15 inches in diameter. So if we're thinking about this in terms of centimeters, we can round up and say that about 30 centimeters is a foot, right? So about 30 centimeters is a foot. So if we go to our inputs here, our creation inputs, and we're looking at the radius here. So if 30 centimeters is a foot, that means our radius, if we want this to be a foot wide, would be about 15 for the radius, right? So then, because radius is from the center out. So this is about a foot in diameter, right? We're going slightly above a foot. So let's try to do this in our head, and let's try to think of it kind of logically here. If 30 centimeters is a foot, that means 6 inches is about 15 centimeters. That means 3 inches is going to be about 7.5 centimeters. So if we're adding on 2 inches to a foot, or let's go ahead and say add 3 onto a foot, that means our radius here is going to need to be, if we need to add, let me think about this again. So if 6 inches is about 15 centimeters, that means 3 inches is going to be about 7.5 centimeters, right? And we're doing this radius, not diameter. So that means we need to split 3 inches and a half, because we're essentially going to be adding an inch and a half to each side when we increase the radius. So 7.5 times 2 or divided by 2 is going to be 3.75. We don't have to be that exact accurate, right? Let's round up and just say 4, right? So we're going to add 4 centimeters to this, which will be 19. And then that is about the diameter of our rim. Again, we're just trying to get in the ballpark here. We don't have to be super precise with all of our measurements. So the next thing I want to do is try to divide this up radially so we can kind of just make a little slice here, and then duplicate that slice around basically. So if I have 5 holes here and 5 lug nuts, so this basically our radius is split into fifths, right? So there's 5 of these. So if we're to divide that by, if let's just think about this in terms of divisions first. So if we're to divide this into 5 segments and I make my radial axis divisions 5, we'd have something like that. However, this isn't going to give us a very round shape, right? So we want to multiply this 5. Let's do something like 20, right? Which will multiply 5 by 4, meaning that 4 of these divisions is going to equal like 1 slice, right, out of this. I'm going to take it a little bit further, and because I want to have a lot of divisions here, it's just going to make it easier for me to model this. So I'm going to take it a little bit further, and we could do 30, and that would mean that about 6 of our divisions here is going to be a fifth of this entire thing. So I'm going to stick with 30. I think that's a good amount of divisions to start with. We can always subdivide it and add more later, but we're going to keep it at 30 for now. And let's just look at it in our front view to make sure we're getting the right sort of 30 here. I want to do the one, let's see. Let's try not to do it off center. So let's add in, it's really not off center, to be honest. We could do it with just 6. So that's actually 7. I just don't like how it's slightly rotated. So let's see if we can just rotate it. Around 6 degrees. Yeah, so 6 degrees should make it straight up and down. So that way, when we split this up into 6, we get our little pie slice there that's just like right on the top. So we can essentially create all of our details here. And we could even probably just take it a step further and do 3. But I'll show you guys that here in a second. So if you had a more complicated rim shape, you could even split it up even further. So yeah, so I want to build my rim just in this area here. So I'm going to keep all of my other divisions here for now. But what I want to do is I want to make them a different color, right? So let's select our 6 here like this. And let me look at this from our perspective. Yeah, I'm going to select my 6 here. And then I'm going to hold down shift and select the whole thing. And that will essentially invert my selection. So I get something like that. And then I'm just going to assign a different material to it. For now, we can just assign our plastic material to it. This is just going to help me sort of look at this in terms of just this area. So just modeling things within this area is what I need to be concerned with. I don't need to concern myself with anything that sort of falls outside of that area. And whoops, and just for the sake of making this a little bit easier, I'm going to kind of just make this a little bit wider. But we're just modeling sort of this front face of the rim. We don't have to worry about anything else. And I'm just going to model within this area here. I'm going to model the whole thing, but I'm really only concerned with the details we get in this area. So the other thing I want to do here is add some cap divisions, so subdivision caps. Now this is happening. You see how my model's kind of freaking out? This is happening just because we changed the scale of it. Uh, your your initial shapes that you create, your initial primitive shapes, they just don't like it when you change them and then go back and try to change the input. So I'm just going to back out to back before I did that scale. And now let's change the subdivision height. And we're still getting, weird stuff with our shader, but that's okay. We can just reassign. We can reassign those pretty quickly. And in fact, I should be able, let's see if I go to face mode. Yeah, so we'll need to reassign those. So I'm just going to reassign my car mat. And then we'll select let's do this from the top view. So let's select our 6. So we can even do this with this lasso selection. I can just do something like this. And then I'll just deselect the ones that I don't want. Right. So we have something like that with our 6 divisions there. And then same thing, right? I can just hold down shift to invert that selection. And then we'll assign that plastic material. Again, this is just so visually I can kind of see what we're doing. And to start with, I'm going to completely ignore like the holes in it. And I'm just going to work on like the circular details, right? So let's go ahead now. I think it'll be okay to come in and just kind of make this a bigger, in all honesty, I think what I'm going to do for now is just delete all of those other parts. So we basically just have a disk here. That's just going to make it a little bit easier to model. And then I'm just going to start with the very outer rim and we're going to start modeling inward, right? So we can take this, there's that outer lip. Let's look at a different, right? So there's kind of like an outer lip there. This is actually a pretty good view of what this rim looks like. Even though I think this one has a little bit more detail, kind of goes in a few different ways. But anyway, we're just going to model this out, right? So let's take this and we can just kind of extrude it up. And now I have a little bit of experience with tires. I used to work in a tire shop. So I'm very familiar with what a rim looks like and what a tire looks like. So I'm going to try to trust my expertise in that area for this. So I'm going to take this. I know that this top lip is kind of beveled, but this one's relatively sharp here. So I'm going to add a little bit of a bevel here. Something like this. And then to sharpen this corner, we'll just add another edge loop there. Oops. All right. And you can periodically just hit smooth to kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. All right. Kind of just looks like a plate right now. And we'll add in my computer's doing that weird thing again. I'm going to try something here. Sometimes if you go into your preferences and go to your display viewport, you can change the type of rendering engine that you're using. I'm going to change it to DirectX 11, which means I need to restart Maya. So I'm going to click save and I'll just save my scene and I'm going to restart Maya real quick here. And we're back. Okay, so let's add in an edge loop here. And then it actually kind of dips down a little bit right here. So we'll add an edge loop. And, again, a lot of this stuff I'm just kind of eyeballing. Around here. And then I can take everything. I'm actually going to delete the center ring here just to kind of make things a little bit easier for me. And then I can take everything. Now, a really easy way to do this, if I want to just select everything here, is I can select this face ring right here, and I can do shift period, which is grow selection. So shift period, and that will grow my selection up to about there. And then I'm going to extrude that all down like that a little bit. And then I'm going to take both of these edges and bevel both of these edges. And we'll look at it in smooth mode, just again to kind of get an idea of what those shapes are looking like. And then it goes out for a little ways more. So I'll add in another edge loop, maybe right around here. It's probably closer up here. And then there's another little edge loop inside there, which we'll deal with here in a second. And this part here, I'm probably going to have to delete eventually. But then it goes down, it kind of swoops down, right? So after this edge right here, it's going to kind of start to swoop down a little bit. So rather than grabbing and extruding down, I'm just going to grab what I have here and move it down. So let's do that same thing where we select a ring, and then I'm going to hit grow selection a couple times. And I'm just going to move it down a little bit. And then we'll do that again, just maybe here, move that down a little bit. And yeah, so overall, I'm just trying to get that swooping shape that comes down. But this edge here needs to be kind of sharp, right? So I'm going to bevel that edge. And for this one, we're going to turn chamfer off and do a pretty tight bevel because I want that to be relatively sharp. So let's do like 0.05. All right. Again, we can kind of take a look at that. How does that look? That looks pretty good. And again, right now I'm only concerned about these sort of radial divisions that I have here, or radial details. I'm not worried about the holes in anything quite yet. Okay, so after it kind of swoops down like this, and again, we can look at some of our other reference to kind of look at how aggressive that swoop down is. All right, so it's really not that aggressive. And then in some areas, it looks like it actually kind of bulges out, but some of these rims are slightly different. We're doing something more along the lines of this here. All right. So, and then it's going to kind of come up a little bit. So where's my other, there we are. So then it kind of swoops back up a little bit and then it flattens out. So right around here somewhere, we're going to grab these and I'm just going to go ahead and make 2 edge loops. And then same thing, I'm just going to grow that selection to something like this and kind of just move that up a little bit and widen it out a little bit. And do something like that. And then for this one, we can bevel this. And again, we can smooth that out, check it out, see how it looks. And I think that looks pretty good, you know, with the exception of not having those holes there. Okay, so what do we need to do next? I think next, what I want to do is actually kind of build out the inside of this rim, because this does affect the sort of look that this area has. So, what I'm going to do for that is, I probably should have done this before. Actually, no, we can just use what we already have here to do this. And again, I'm not going to be a stickler about it, right? But I'm going to just kind of use my existing knowledge on what a rim sort of looks like. So we're just going to extrude this down. And I'm really only concerned with this front part of the rim. I'm not going to go all the way back yet, but I'm going to bring this down and we'll extrude this in a little bit, somewhere around here. And then I'm going to extrude it up and I want this to kind of slope into this other shape here. So I'm just going to continue sort of extruding. And until we get close to the same sort of radius that we have down here. So maybe something like this, we can edit it a little bit. Trust me, this will kind of add to the look of the overall rim. Right. And then technically, I think we should probably take this in quite a bit. And let's make another little edge loop here and tuck that in with our scale tool as well. And for now, I think this is fine. We can edit it a little bit more later, but this is kind of the goal that we're looking for here. Now, if we wanted to join these up here, we could just select, we could use bridge, and bridge works with multiple edges, right? So we could just double click to select this whole edge loop here, shift double click, select that one. And if we bridge, it should just bridge up for us, right? It's smart enough to know that that's what we want. Right. And even if I need to make this hole a little bit smaller, it's just a matter of grabbing these verts now, kind of scaling them in. So that's not a big deal. But now what we want to do is cut our hole here into the rim. And we can do this with booleans pretty easily. So I'm going to try to make this shape a little bit. Well, actually, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I think we can actually make this shape without using booleans. So let's actually try to do this without using booleans. Uh, and then we'll go from there. I don't know. See, now I'm kind of second guessing myself. Let's use booleans. All right. So I'm going to make a cube. Actually, no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cylinder or a pipe. We're going to make a pipe. So, because I want to show you guys booleans, right? Another way you can use booleans. So we're going to do a pipe. Where's pipe? There's our pipe. And I'm going to make it the same number of divisions. That was so it just matches up our other surface a little bit better. So we're going to do 30 divisions here. And then I'm going to just tweak the radius and height of it to be about and thickness to be about what we're looking for with our holes right there. So it comes down pretty close to that other side. It's pretty big. So let's increase the thickness a little bit and then the radius a little bit more. So something around there. All right, so let's make sure it's going all the way through here like that. And remember, we rotated our rim 6 degrees, so we get that angle right. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this one 6 degrees as well. This will just make life easier because our geometry will already sort of match up in some areas. Okay, so now what I want to do is delete. So I'm making sort of like, if the hole is like a negative cutout, I'm making the positive form of that hole basically. So I'm just going to delete everything up to a point. And I think let's actually go to, let's do 60 divisions. It'll just make things a little bit easier for us. So we're going to do 60 divisions, which is double. So that's just going to let me go like halfway outside of here. And the reason I want to come this far out is because I'm going to delete a lot of this stuff. So and you know, your rims are all going to be a little bit different just depending on your car and the rims you choose to model. But this is basically my method that I like to use for making rims. Right. So then I'm just going to take this positive shape and let's move it up out of here like this. And I'm going to bridge both ends. And now I'm only going to do one side of this. I'm not concerned about both sides. I'm only going to do one side because then we're going to just duplicate it over. Right. So you'll see there's no point in doing that extra work if we don't need to do that extra work. Right. So from here, what I want to do is I'm going to take these two corners and I'm going to round this out. So I'm going to see if I can bevel these two corners and get them round enough. Probably not. I'm probably going to need to delete this edge right here. So I'm going to control delete that edge. Do I want to keep that edge? Right? Because that's one of my edges that lines up with my geometry. So do I want to keep that edge? Not sure. Let's try getting rid of it. Control delete. And then let's round out our corners. And we'll just go from there. So bevel, give it some more segments to a fraction. So something like that. That's definitely the shape that we're going for. And that edge gets pretty close right there. So I think I'm okay. This one's a little bit off. I may need to make a new edge there, or kind of reroute this one. But that's pretty good. And then I want to, let's just clean the rest of this up a little bit. Get rid of these extra edges that I don't need. Again, I'm not concerned. Anything on this side of this line, I'm not super concerned about. You'll understand why very soon. All right, so we'll just poke that through, where that goes through like that. And we can use a Boolean function. So we're going to do select the base, shift select this part, and we're going to go to mesh Booleans difference A minus B. All right, and that will cut that shape out for us for the whole. Again, I'm not worried about this side. We're going to flip it over here in a second. You know what I want to do here? I kind of want to make this even bigger than what I have it as. I'm thinking. Let me think. We'll go with it. We'll see if we can make this work. So let's do our Booleans. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete the history on this. Right, so everything's sort of committed there. Now, if we hit 3 to smooth it right now, things are going to kind of freak out on us and change colors and all that good stuff. So we need to kind of fix our geometry. So let's just reassign our material. Oops, I added a new material. Let's reassign car material. And it also messed up our colors there, but you know, I know that we're going to go from this edge to this edge right down the middle. So why don't we just go ahead and delete? No, we'll leave it for now. I don't want to delete it quite yet because we need to cut in another hole for where our bolt is going to go. So I want to grab all my verts here and all the ones that are right on top of each other, I want to merge together. So I'm going to go to edit mesh merge, and then we'll check it with our smooth mode just to make sure that, yeah, all those look pretty good merged up together. But this in this area still looks quite nasty. And down here as well. So let's just get rid of this edge and this edge. Some of these I'm just going to use target weld. And again, I want to adhere to the shape of my hole there. So I'm not concerning myself with, yeah, I want it to basically adhere to the shape of that hole. So yeah, I'm just trying to fix my geometry now. So we can use target weld and multi-cut, kind of just go through and lay out this geometry. For something like this, I'm just going to go ahead and add another edge loop right there or two. And that way this will just connect straight across. And for this one, we'll target weld that one up there. So that part is fixed. Let's go through and fix the bottom. This one I'm not as concerned about because we're not really going to see it, right? It's going to be, for the most part, this stuff's going to be hidden. So uh, I don't have to stress out about it too much. All right, so let's hit smooth. That actually looks pretty good. It just needs to be a bit sharper here. So we could try beveling the edge. We could try beveling all of this. That might work. And again, I don't care about this stuff. Let's try beveling. Yeah, so we'll add in a bevel there. I'm going to add in a bevel to the bottom. And then just for the sake of my geometry not stretching too much when I smooth it, I'm going to add in another edge loop right here in the center. So somewhere right around there. So now when I smooth that, that should look pretty good. Let's turn off our wireframe. And I'm just looking at the highlight, right? So I think that's good enough. All right, so now let's make a lug nut hole. Now the lug nut holes actually fall in between the lines of these two, um, where the two holes are going to be. So the lug nut hole is actually going to fall in between, like right in here somewhere. So what I'm going to do for this, instead of using booleans, I'm going to try to do this a little bit of a different way. Let's just add some more divisions in here. So something like that. And then I'm going to try to select these faces, right? So that falls on right in the middle of that line right there. And we're going to see if we can circularize this and have it not completely freak out our mesh. It's a flat surface, so it shouldn't be too much harm. And for the most part, it looks okay. We just kind of need to twist it back into position like this. And then I should be able to just extrude that straight down because there's a little bit of a lip right before it goes into the lug nut hole. And then we can extrude it in and then down again. And before we extrude it down, let's try this because we have the bottom part here, right? That we need to sort of match with this. So what I'm going to do instead is Yeah. So let's do the grow selection thing. So I'm going to select that edge ring, and we're going to do grow selection. So we have something like that. Oops. No, I don't want all of that. Let me delete. I'm going to delete this ring. Let's just do from here. Let's do grow selection. Yeah, so that's basically what I want, something like that, right? And I'm going to duplicate it, edit mesh, duplicate, and then I can just move, can move the duplicate down. I know this seems weird, but again, this is kind of one of those unconventional way of modeling things. I'm going to scale this negatively just so it's facing the other direction. I could just reverse the normals as well. In fact, let's do that. Let's just go to um, mesh display reverse. All right, so now this is facing down. Trust me, there's a reason, there's a method to my madness here. And then what I can do is I can combine these two together. Mesh combine. And then I'll bridge up as much of this surface as I can. Let's see if bridge works. Yeah, see, bridge doesn't like working if there's an uneven amount of edges involved. So I'm just going to bridge up the edges that I want to bridge up. Let me move the whole thing up a little bit. So actually move it up further because I think there is a little bit, it does get a little bit bigger here. So I'm just going to bridge up the edges that need bridging, right? Again, I'm only concerned about like half of this little pie slice. So let's bridge these up. Oops. And I think that's all I need is those. And then for this, what I can do is just, we're going to delete these interior faces for both of these. So I'm going to delete it up here and delete it up here. All right, so now we have a hole going all the way through. And now I can just select these edges, bridge. So those bridge up really nicely. And then for here, I can just control delete that edge loop, and then I'll just move this one up and in a little bit like that. And now we have our lug nut hole. I'm going to bevel all of our edges here just so we get a nice sharp corner on these whenever we smooth. And in some cases that will that will give us ingon. So we're still going to need to kind of clean up a couple areas right here. But overall, I think that's pretty good. Just need to take our target weld and kind of weld up a couple of these areas like that one and that one. All right, hit smooth, take a look at it. That looks pretty good for what we want, right? We do still want to bridge up these two. So that's just a matter of selecting these two and hitting bridge. And actually, I think before I do that, Oops. I want to make this a little bit bigger. It comes pretty close to this area right here. So I'm going to select this edge loop, scale it up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be super accurate, but from the front or from the top, we're going to do the same thing here. That's a little bit more along the lines of what we want. And then we can bridge these two together like that. And then probably give these a little bit of a bevel as well so they hold their shape when we smooth. And I'm going to add an edge loop right there in the center. We'll do one in the center here as well. All right. So we have the modeling done for the most part, right? And we didn't have to model it over and over again. So now what we can do, we'll do this from our top view, is delete everything. It's very important that our pivot point is still in the center, right? But what we can do is switch to face mode. And I'm just going to delete everything except for our little slice that we have to duplicate. And even the hole that we made, even that, I'm going to delete it right down the middle like that. Okay, so now we want to mirror it, right? So that's super easy to do. Let's go ahead and we got a lot of history here. So let's go ahead and delete our history. Now to mirror it, all I have to do is duplicate it, Control D. And then the duplicate, I'm going to give it a -1x scale. So we're on this is the X axis. So that's the axis I want to mirror it on. So I'm going to do -1x for that. And then I can grab these two, combine them together, mesh combine. I'm going to select the verts down the center. And we're going to do edit mesh merge. And if we did this correctly, if we didn't move those edges at all, we got everything lined up. Those should just merge together, no problem, right? So we can check it out smooth, right? And that looks pretty darn good. And now we need to just rotate this around radially. Now, when we combine those together, our pivot point changed, right? So this is not good for radial symmetry, right? We want our pivot point to stay in the center. But if we created this in the center of the grid, right? If I turn my grid on now, it's very easy to just move my pivot point to the center of the grid, right? We can turn on grid snapping, hold down D, and we can snap that to the center of the grid. All right, so now our pivot point is back in the center of the grid. So now we can duplicate this around radially. So you could do it manually. You could do it through here, your transforms. We're going to do it through duplicate special. So I'm going to go to edit, duplicate special, and look at the options here. And let's go ahead and reset our options because this is something I use quite a bit. So there's always like old settings in it, right? And let's think about some math for a second, right? We did this in a way where there's 5 of these. So, and we want these rotated around radially, so in 360 degrees. So if you bring up your calculator and you do 360 divided by 5, you get 72. So we want to rotate these duplicates that we're going to make. We want to rotate them around 72 degrees in the Y direction, right? So rotate X, Y, Z. We want to rotate these around 72 degrees. And we want 4 copies. There's 5 of them, but we already have 1. So we don't need 5 copies. We only need 4 copies. So I'm going to do number of copies at 4 and duplicate special. And we were a bit off here for some reason. So let me, I think we got it right. We just kind of left an extra edge where we don't necessarily need it. Hmm. Not the end of the world. We can still salvage this, but let me think for a second. So here you go, right? Like I got my math a little bit wrong. Um, so I think what I'm going to do here is let's see how far back we can undo. Actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this one. Let me think for a moment. So the issue that we're having here, or that I'm having, it's my fault. So it's my issue, is that I just made my lug nuts down, or the lug nut holes here down the wrong line. So I need to correct that mistake. So I think the way that I can do this is well, first we need to just delete this sort of line of polygons here all the way down. I'm gonna go all the way down to my lug nut area. And see, I'm trying to figure out a way to actually salvage this. Okay, I got it. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna delete these, right? And I'm gonna delete this line. Okay. I'm gonna separate these. So they're two different objects. So we're gonna go to mesh separate. Then it should just be a matter of rotating this. Whoops, just rotating this piece. Um, 12 degrees, negative 12 degrees, right? That seems about right. And then I can combine them back together and we can rebridge them back together. All right. So I think that will fix our issue. Okay. Yeah, I think that's going to fix our problem there. Let's delete our history, freeze transforms. And we want to get our pivot point back in the center of our grid again. So we'll turn on grid snapping, hold down D, move that to the center of the grid. And we're going to duplicate and do a negative 1x scale again. So we get this. Grab both of these, combine them together. Grab the verts down the center, edit mesh merge. We hit it with a smooth so we can take a look at it. Everything looks good. Okay. Now, again, pivot point in the center. So every time you combine them together, it will mess that up a little bit. So let's move our pivot point back to the center of the grid. And now we should be able to use those same exact duplicate special settings again, because it was the settings I had right. It was just the model that I had wrong. So let's go to edit, duplicate special, and bam, there we have our perfect rim. So now we can just select everything here and do a mesh combine. And again, if we did everything correctly, then all of those vertices where they line up just should be perfectly aligned. So we should be able to select all of our vertices and do an edit mesh merge. And then we can hit it with smooth. And for the most part, it looks pretty good, right? But there's a few areas here, right? There's a few areas on each one of these where we just need to sort of merge those together. Right. I'm just going to do it. What we can do is just we can do it to one of them. It just depends on how much work you want to do. But we could just fix one of them, delete, and then duplicate over again. That should be the way to go. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and just fix one of those. I think this is important too, right? So you guys can see how to fix problems whenever you run into them. So I'm just going to use merge to center for each one of these. So I'm just going to select 2 verts at a time and hit G, which is merge to center. And we'll do that all the way down. Oops. Hit F just to frame up our selection. And then we need to do these bottom ones as well. These are a little bit more difficult. Might want to do these from like the inside. Just marquee over them like that, make things a little bit faster. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. So now I can just delete. This is our good one here. So I'm going to do the same thing we did before, where I'm just going to delete everything up to a point, up to this line right here. As I'm doing this, I should check just to make sure I'm not accidentally deleting something I don't want to delete. All right. So, and then up to this line right here. Okay. And then again, our pivot point should still be in the center of the grid, but let's check to make sure. So it's actually not, it's off. So let's put that in the center of the grid again. Oops. And we'll use our same exact duplicate special settings. The hotkey for that is Control-Shift-D. And there we have it. And select them all, mesh combine, select all of our verts, edit mesh, merge, and we'll smooth everything, check it out. That looks pretty good, I think. I think that looks pretty good. So, um, from here, we can start working on our tires. So let's go ahead and before I end this video, let's delete our history on this, freeze our transforms. Let's get this oriented correctly. So let's unhide our car here, except for our lighting. We'll keep our lighting hid for now. Let's turn off snap to grid. And so let's rotate it 90 degrees. We can put it into position. Probably easier to do this in the side view. Right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rim that I already have here, and let me smooth the normals on it. I'm going to use the rim that I already have here, and I'm going to make a little quick rudimentary tire out of this rim. So I'm just going to take this edge loop right here and go to extrude, and we'll scale this out. I'm actually going to go out because tires have a little bit of an outward bulge when they wrap around a rim. Oops. So let's go ahead and extract this, right? So I'm going to take this and go to edit mesh, extract. And let's fix those normals. So we'll go to mesh display conform. And then I'm going to make the rest of my little crude tire. So I'm just holding down shift to extrude out and scale or move, extrude. And we're going to do, when it comes time to modeling the tire, which we'll probably do in the next video, we're going to do it a very similar way. Maybe we will use booleans or something this time around, though. I'm just trying to get it right here. I don't think these were very wide tires back then. I think they may be a little bit big. So let's see if we can just grab all of our, get rid of that guy. Just going to grab all of the edge loops here, except for this center one, and just scale everything down a little bit. Like that. That's probably about what we want, right? Something like that. Move it in a little bit. And there we have our very basic rims. Maybe a little bit bigger. Right. We'll go ahead and delete these. And I'm just going to leave for now, leave the rim entire, just outside of all of the other groups. And let's try to get a good, let's get a good thumbnail here. So let's reassign our plastic material. We'll unhide our lighting. And let's do a nice thumbnail render. Maybe we'll put it like right here. And then we'll put our number down here. Let's move our ground plane down a little bit. All right. So I will see you guys in the next video where we'll start working on the tires. Now there's still, I don't want to make it seem like I'm done with the car. There's still lots of little tiny details I'm going to add to the car. Um, I just think it's a good idea to kind of work on various things and not just dwell on, I like to spread the love a little bit, right? Work on multiple things rather than just sometimes focusing on one thing for so long will kind of burn you out. So it's always a good idea to kind of take a break and work on other little things here and there. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.